Hey guys, it's Dconnic, and after playing No Rest for the Wicked for a bit over 10 hours now, I think, this video will be both of first impressions as well as an initial feedback for the devs based off of my experience. Because this is a first impressions, I could be wrong on certain aspects that I just may not have encountered or not, as I have still not finished all the content the game has to offer. So I just wanted to give a little disclaimer on that front. My first impression watching ashore on Sakra, or Sakra, however it's pronounced, was how engaging the combat was. Every mob I faced was strong enough to kill me, which I personally really enjoyed. It really hit the mark on being the Souls-like game that was promised. I also really like the graphics of the game. I had moments I would wander onto a random ledge and the camera would zoom out and I would just, be in awe. And the attention to detail in certain areas that also impressed me. I remember walking to the rookery beds after beating the first boss and hearing the sounds of barefoot against the cobblestone, then equipping the boots and having that sound change was a very it's those little things that just show how much work and effort was put into the game we're currently playing. The game also offers a good variety of different melee playstyles, from quick dual wielding daggers to slow two-handed swords and anything in between. But this also brings me to my first negative about the game, which was that it feels like melee is sort of forced on you with the combat styles. If you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoy the content, as it not only is a big morale boost for me to keep making videos, it helps the videos reach more people as we try to hit 1,000 subs. Now, if you have been on this channel for any amount of time, you will know that I love minions. But what you may not know is that I also like magic as much, or maybe just slightly less, as a playstyle in general. So hopping into No Rest for the Wicked, I already knew what style I was going for. Though it took me a long while to get a staff, I was honestly instantly disappointed to find out that the magic playstyle just included beating your enemies with a stick until you generated enough focus to cast one fireball, then you go back to beating with the stick. Now, I have seen some items that make focus generation more efficient, so I would use less attacks between spells, but I have not yet, as of this moment, seen items that grant passive focus generation, which, keep in mind, could still be in the game and I just haven't found it. But on the off chance that it is not in the game, or the intended gameplay loop for magic is to beat enemies with a stick, then I think this is a system that needs some revision. The same goes for bow, as it currently is. It goes in the offhand slot and it requires focus just to even shoot an arrow. Another place for improvements is the abilities given by weapons and runes. They need a lot more in the way of description. I had recently slotted in Heal Aura into my dagger, which I'm using as a swap for my staff, and after a channel, it would heal you for a lot of life. Fast forward to now making this video, I remembered an ability on the staff called Channel, which at the time just seemingly drained my health for no apparent reason, and I couldn't read what it did, so I just never used it. So I stopped recording this video to go try out, despite the health loss, to just stick through it and get to the end. And I actually was surprised that at the end of the charge, it actually generated focus, which would have honestly been very useful to know earlier, but without any sort of description whatsoever in the game or online, I just never figured it out. Something else I have also found out is if you invest 3 points into focus and buy the repair runes, you can fully fix all your gear with full focus, saving you a ton of money. Now, while we're going off the topic of saving a ton of money, I also think the game has a somewhat weird gameplay loop, especially around boss fights, because of the systems currently in the game. Specifically, the fact that food items consumed during the fight are not restored on death, and your items also lose durability, so you would have to fix them every couple of attempts, which, if you do not use the repair rune, costs gold. So what ends up happening is, if you die enough on a boss, you could end up breaking your character by running out of resources to fix your gear or to make food. This effectively means you would have to go back to farming for a bit if your gear isn't broken, and if it is, you might just have to create a new realm to farm the beginner zone and eventually fix your gear. I also find that it makes me not want to use food, as it currently feels like if I eat enough, then I have to go do chores in the way of like gathering more herbs for food. Eventually though, we should be able to buy all mats we need for food, as it sounds like as there is a chef that sells ingredients including herbs and stuff for money. I have not unlocked this chef, and I cannot find the quest in town that people say it's behind, but that's me digressing. For money, I have had more than enough since I played, completing bounties and challenges, but I can see the average player potentially sub-breaking their characters on a boss. The system as a whole, in my opinion, needs a lot of work, as another problem is it interrupts your boss grinding to then go gather materials, which would in turn mess with the attack timings that you might have learned at that up to that point, and it would discourage you from eating on non-bosses or even during bosses, as if you died, you effectively just wasted all the food you had eaten. A current pain point I have experienced is with the early game storage. The way I understand the storage system is you can build stashes after you buy a house, and I do not mind this at all. However, with the current amount of resources the game gives you for upgrades, crafting, etc., you will quickly fill up this community storage, and then you will get a full inventory on top of this, and that would then limit your loot going forward. And this is a problem that has many easy fixes, one of which could just be giving us unlimited community stash space at the cost of like not being able to move it or anything. It's very annoying to get to it currently, so that would be the opportunity cost. They could also allow us to drop stashes in the rookery and transfer those to our houses once we do buy one. I'm not going to talk much about the performance issues, as I'm sure this has been brought up multiple times at this point, but as a last pain point, I want to bring up how easy it is to fall and how punishing vault damage can be. Dashing currently does not let you reduce the distance. It is currently fixed, so once you dash, you have to go the full distance. So it is very easy to then dash straight off a cliff when fighting in a tight environment. And while I have no problems with the fall distance that one-shots your character, it feels specifically bad when you miss a jump and then you take 20 plus damage on a height that looks small, especially if the jump looked like it should have landed, right? That said, this problem becomes less of an issue if you just have the heal aura rune and you don't mind using your focus for heals. And as a last point, before I forget, actually, as a second last point, I'm also not the biggest fan of it taking real world time to get upgrades done. I find it very weird that I would set an upgrade and then it takes, let's say, 4 hours because it looks like it's scaling. I have like, I think a level 2 to 3 upgrade that is set to take 4 hours if I give it all the materials. That is honestly another very weird one that I just want them to remove. You can actually leave a time in. It should just be like in-game time, and then even then you give us a way to skip in-game time if we so choose, like sleeping, for example. Overall, my first impressions on the game are actually pretty good despite the problems I just talked about, and I believe the game has a lot of potential. I'm bringing all of these as feedback for hope that they are all improved on and we get a better game overall come launch. But let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with the feedback and what your experience has been like so far. If you haven't already, do consider subscribing. And with all that said, thank you for watching.